Death is a natural part of life, but that doesn't make it any easier for us to think about parting from our loved ones or making sure that the wealth we've accumulated through hard work during our lives is used how we may have intended it to be, for the benefit of those we leave behind, like our spouse, children or grandchildren. Most of the time we focus so much on living our lives that we may be unaware that the government's waiting in the wings to collect inheritance tax from our estates when we die.
The idea that you're taxed on your income, you save from your income, you're taxed again, that sort of thing infuriates me.
The revenues raised from death taxation have increased over the last decade, and more families fell into the inheritance tax trap. In many cases, this comes as a great shock, simply because most people are under the impression that only the very wealthy have to worry about this tax.
Inheritance tax 25 years ago never entered my mind, until you suddenly read an article and think, about with the price of my house, I'm in this lot, isn't it?
I live in a house that's worth about $450, and I know that if anything happens to my husband and I, that the government are going to take a lot of my money.
I know there's a certain threshold that you don't have to pay inheritance tax on. Apart from that, there's really not much else that I know about it.
It's got like a threshold, so it's over a certain amount. Not sure what that is.
Is it 250,000 or is it more than that?
It might be 300 and something now. It was 285 or something. I think it's just gone up.
I thought it was 250.
It's property and money up to about £250,000, and then anything above £250,000 in cash or assets or whatever is taxable.
I thought it was the value of your house, basically, and your shares and cash in the bank.
That 40% is a great big chunk, and it gets taken away.
The first point to make is that IHT is calculated on the value of all assets held at the time of death, including the car, contents of the house, cash in the bank, and of course, the value of property. So, what happens if you do nothing? Let's meet Richard and his wife Susan and their two children, David and Katie. Sadly, Richard's mother has recently passed away. Both of Richard's parents had written very simple wills, but hadn't considered that any IHT planning was necessary.
Mum and Dad never thought of themselves as well off, but the value of their home, which didn't have a mortgage, has increased quite a lot over the last few years, hasn't it? And when Dad died about 8 years ago, he left everything to Mum in his will, and he was sure he was doing the right thing. Sadly, when Mum died about 4 months ago, our solicitor was filling out some tax forms, and he said to us that we had a tax liability of over £25,000.
Yeah, it was really terrible for both of us at the time. We just buried Richard's mum, and the last thing we expected was this demand, which gave us such a short time to pay the bill. Do you know, they even took into account her engagement ring and the old piano that had been in the family home for years. It was really quite distressing.
Yeah, well, I got straight back onto the solicitor to check if that was really right. And they explained that not only was it accurate, but we had to pay within the time limit or suffer a significant interest charge.
Yeah, your mum didn't have that money in her account, did she, to cover the bill?
Well, no, and obviously we couldn't sell any of our assets to cover it, and we certainly didn't have that kind of money lying around. So we were forced to go to the bank to take out a short-term loan.
Yeah, and that wasn't cheap, was it?
My folks would have been horrified if they'd known. My dad worked really hard all his life and always paid his taxes like everyone else. He'd have been furious if he thought we'd had to pay this bill. He was always so careful with his money, wasn't he? I suppose the one good thing to come out of this is that at least we can take this experience and pass it on to Sue's parents so that they don't make the same mistake.
Yeah, my mum and dad were really upset to see what Richard had gone through after his mum died, and they're determined to avoid that same situation.
Yeah, and they're a lot younger than my folks were, aren't they? Still in good health. But still, your dad still thinks it's, no time to lose in getting things sorted out.
Yeah, Dad went to see a financial advisor who advised them on their inheritance tax position and said they probably would have some tax liability unless they took certain simple steps to avoid it. Mum said something about trusts, so they're coming over for lunch this afternoon and we're going to find out some more. It's just one less worry for both of them.
Susan's parents have sought advice and made arrangements that'll go a long way to resolving any IHT problems in the years to come. Remember that each case is unique and any advice received is based on individual circumstances. You should also remember that the Chancellor is prone to tinkering with IHT legislation on a regular basis, but your advisor will be able to keep you up to date as and when things change. The important thing is that whatever you do, don't sit back and do nothing. Take advice and enjoy the feeling of having one less worry.